One tried with 13, two with 14, two with 15. Not a bad way to kick off a campaign, as it turned out. It's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. Now, joining me for this latest Rep Pod is the same two gentlemen who helped me go back over Ireland's test against Australia last week, starting with someone earning Harpin cap number 42, coming to us from Gibraltar. Welcome back to Mr. Rich Massoud.
Evening, Jeff. Evening, Kieran.
Good to see you.
Great to be back.
And also with us again is the owner-operator of the Post to Post Sport blog. This is pod appearance number 26 to go with a host of written articles for our own blog back in the day. This is actually his third week in a row with us, so he's kind of turning into the Andrew Porter of the group. Well, hello once again to Mr. Kieran Duffy.
Been an intense camp. It's been a big run. I was on for the marathon getting the URC, and I mentioned it was my last appearance of my 20s. And I turned 30 that Wednesday, the day after I sneezed and got a pain in my arm. So I was thinking, this is it. This is the end of any kind of intensity for me. But here we go, three pods in a row. So yeah, I'm doing like Keane Healy did in New Zealand a few years ago.
That's it. We'll have the IRF onto us to manage your time but before the Six Nations. Okay, so let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Bristol Bears v Leinster in round one of the 24-25 Investec Champions Cup. It was played at Ashton Gate on Sunday, December the 8th, with what was probably the most awkward of kickoff times for the traveling Leinster fans. And that's before we take into account the effects of Storm Dara, which was still providing plenty of wind and rain as AJ McGinty got the match underway, Rich.
He did, and in the in the finest traditions of the Harpin On Rugby halves that I get, it was the shittiest half of rugby ever, which I had to rewatch, of course. But anyway, at least the pay's good.
There you go.
The pay's good, and the Christmas.
The good agents.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't think I'm letting any secrets out of the bag here. It was a pretty grim, dire first half of rugby from both sides. I mean, this is clearly we talk about Leinster, but both sides were at it. There was a great deal of, by way of an overview, there was a great deal of inaccuracy, a great deal of, unforced errors. I mean, I'll start off by saying that the 40 minutes were actually 53 in length, real time, and that tells its own stories. But anyway, I shall crack on, and hopefully people won't fall asleep while I do. The early exchanges, first 5 minutes or so, were pretty bright in all fairness, from a Leinster perspective. Bristol had a number of carries, but the defense was not just solid, but pretty in their faces, and we didn't give them an inch. So whatever ball they had was rushed, and this led to a couple of turnovers in that first few minutes, and it actually forced them to knock back rather. That led to a line out for us. We went long on a pre-planned move over the line out, and a couple of carries take us into their 22, but sadly we don't release, and Bristol clear. And I think you're already starting to get a hint of what's to come, at least for the next 20 odd minutes or so. So Bristol take the line out on our 10, but a couple of passes later, this is only the fourth minute. Ringer streams out of that, or shoots out of the line, at a rate of knots, and AJ McGinty is still looking for his ribs somewhere in Ashton Gate, because that was the most beautifully timed clunk, legal clunk, I should add. We've seen in a long while. And it's not the first time he's done that. Most certainly won't be the last. but the line speed that he generates and the timing and the reading of the play is just second to none. Well, what an asset to have a 13. So anyway, this actually led to a pretty long stoppage for very obvious reasons while they were checking McGinty out. And we as a result we had a scrum, and this is where I'm going to start mentioning scrum and scrum penalties and scrum bullshit for that first half, and in fact it carried on in the second. But anyway, we get a scrum with our feed, but we give away a free kick for an early engage from Slimani. And like I say, this sets the tone for the scrums. I'm no expert on scrums, but most certainly. But having heard and read some stuff since yesterday from people who actually know what they're talking about, an awful lot of the problem was the refs' mismanagement and lack of understanding of the scrums. And it made for a very bitty game, but very stop-start as you can imagine. And I think it took about 20 odd minutes before we had the first completed scrum, and that which tells its own story. But anyway, it was a free kick. The next few minutes, there was more carries from Bristol, but again, an awful lot of play is sandwiched as between the two 10-meter lines. Nobody making much ground. Both defenses pretty much on top. And the highlight of these first few minutes is Sam's sliding tackle. He needs to be careful, clearly. That's second week in a row that should have got a yellow rather. So anyway, he needs to work on his tackle technique, clearly. It was a judge no arms, but pretty much it was a sliding tackle with his feet, and very, very lucky not to see yellow. Really very lucky not to see yellow, in fairness, because that was just poor tackle technique. So he needs to go to school for that. And again, the next few minutes, and I'm skimming along here because actually there wasn't much happening. Rather that just an awful lot more of this ding dong between the two 10-meter lines. Just some highlights. A very good 50-22 from Bristol. We force a knock on in the line out. So our line out was pretty much solid, certainly in defence. So James Ryan on this occasion actually forces the knock on. But sadly, in the ensuing scrum, Slimani again, who seems to be becoming a bit of a penalty machine, gives away a pen for boring in on his side of the scrum. They go for the corner, and then again our defense, which, as I say, was actually the highlight of that first half. An absolutely brilliant maul defense from 5 meters out, ends up in a maul being called, the ball being unplayable, just near our line, and we get a scrum. And on this occasion, we get a penno for Genge going down on that occasion. So anyway, we clear our lines, and that's the end of that. So for the sake of repeating myself for the next 4 or 5 minutes, once again we have the same drudgery of carries and breakdowns as between the two 10-meter lines. Just a couple of highlights, really. An interesting one, and this was clearly a tactical decision, which changed later on in the half when we went down to 13. But it was not kicking to touch. I really don't know why, because we certainly had the hoodoo over their line out in defence. But anyway, we were kicking to keep the ball in play for as long as possible. But then again, this is Bristol. It's a team that likes to have quick ball and flash and flare. So again, I don't really understand why we weren't going for touch. But anyway, that was one of the things. And then there was a lovely crossfield kick from Sam that Jimmy O'Brien picked up, but sadly it led to him holding on because the cover wasn't there, the breakdown, and we gave away a penalty. The defenses were very much on top. There was counter-rucking from us. So it really was getting down and dirty in the at the breakdown. Whatever ball we had and they had, in all fairness, was nothing much. There were no line breaks. There was hardly any forward movement. Kicks, some of them were loose from both sides. Um, then the other highlight of that period of play was a line out. We get a pen, go for touch in their 22. We secure the line out. Josh Peel's left, feeds Ronan Keller in a lovely blindside move, who then passes it back to Josh, who charges almost to the line, but unfortunately he knocks on he's double teamed, and he knocks on in the tackle. There were a couple of occasions yesterday. I mean, I looked at it again today, but yesterday I thought it was harsh decision there. I thought there was a Bristol hand in the ground pulling that ball back, but actually watching it today, he actually spills it. So anyway, scrum to Bristol, 5 meters out, and then yet another of these idiotic things. Jamison infringes completely unnecessarily. You've got them in coffin corner. Let them have the bloody ball. They're only going to get to the 22, and then it's your ball again. We go again. What was interesting about this particular instance, and this is about the 19th minute of the game, and I appreciate that we've given away a couple of pens, but then again, so had they. We get a warning, an official warning from the ref, 5 meters out from the Bristol line. We have all been watching rugby for many, many years. I have never, ever, ever seen that until I saw it yesterday. We've seen on 1,000,001 times when teams are repeatedly infringing within their 22, near their line, etc., or it's a particular set of offences. So, in fairness to Jack, he asks, "Is this to do with the scrums?" And he was promptly told to bugger off by the ref, because obviously, as the captain, you want to know, what do I need to sort out? It was just he was peremptorily dismissed by Monsieur Broussard. Which the officiating, as I said, was pretty crap. And then conveniently for us, but then to add insult to injury, we give a scrum penalty a minute later. Did we see a card? No. He's warned them a minute before. Nothing. I'm not complaining, clearly, but and that just gives you an insight into what the officiating was like. It was pretty crap. I hate talking about refs because you need to keep the ref out of the equation, and you need to be, if you want to win a game, you need to be good enough for any refereeing or officiating not to have an impact on your performance and on your achieving your success. But I think that it's only fair that when we have to call them out, we call them out, and this was one of those occasions. Sadly, it was Slimani again. As I say, I think that was his third pen in the first half alone. But anyway. Such is the life of a prop and the scrums, and especially yesterday when both sides were getting pinged. So for the next, I think Jay mentioned that he was looking at the highlights today, and it went from kickoff to the 27th minute. There is very good reason why the official highlights blanked out the first 26 minutes. But anyway, we have now reached the 27th minute, and we give a silly, really, because Jack Boyle should know better than to join the maul from the side, which he did. And so they get a penalty. They go for touch, and so 7 meters out. And on this occasion, and this is by now the 32nd minute, the line out is formed. It's collapsed by Ronan Kelleher, who sees yellow. The ensuing tap and go comes to naught, and we clear. But then, following passage of play, this is only a minute after Keller has gone out onto the naughty chair. Max Deegan, in the act of tackling someone, then promptly sticks his leg out. And if you look at it in real time, it almost seems coincidental. And then you look at his eyes and you see exactly what he's doing. So anyway, he sticks his leg out and he trips the Bristol player who's in the process of making a line break. So yellow. So 2 yellows in 2 minutes. And that is as good as it got for Bristol, because for some reason we needed to go down 2 men in personnel for Leinster to wake up. But anyway, before we get to that point, they go for off that ensuing penalty. They go for the line out. They get a line out 5 meters out, ball off the top to their number 8, who carries well and hard to the line. Ball's recycled, and Lahif, the guy with a mad look, he must be related to Rutzer as well. He goes over from about a meter out, and 7-0 to Bristol, because that is converted, is just shy of the posts. So 7-0 up, things looking pretty bleak at that moment. 2 men down for another 10 minutes, 11 minutes really. So you're thinking, what on earth are they going to do now? And it's always said that it's not how it's always about how you react to adversity, and that's the real measure of a team. And yesterday, after that 33rd minute or 32nd minute when they conceded the try, there was a huddle behind the posts, with only 13 men in it, of course. Whatever was said there, whoever pushed the buttons, whoever flicked that switch, it was a very different Leinster that kicked off a minute later. You could almost sense the intensity was up, the desire was up. I think they were pissed off. They're only human. I don't see why they need to be pissed off to start to start performing. But anyway, they were clearly pissed off. But they don't deal with the restart. We regain possession in their half. A number of very strong carries take us into their 22, and we force an offside penalty advantage. Couple of recyclings later, but obviously with the penalty advantage here. And Sam kicks the ball over the Bristol defence. Jordan Larmour is charging down in that direction. We get again, they fluff their lines, and it falls beautifully for Jordan Larmour, and he just crosses the line completely untouched from about 5 meters out. So that's converted, much to the annoyance of the Bristol faithful. Sam was waiting for the kicking clock to tick down, so there were a few boos. But anyway, he converts, so 7 all of a sudden. And for the next 5-6 minutes until half time, I think it can best be encapsulated. I'm just going to quote Chris Robshaw, who was on comms. I'll just quote him for the remaining 6-7 minutes. It seems as if it's Bristol down to 13, and that tells you everything you need to know about that final passage of play. So from the 33rd minute, for the next 7 or so minutes, there was only one team in it. It was one-way traffic, and that was Leinster, despite the fact that they were down to 13. It was interesting to hear today. I heard Robbie's post-match interview, and he says they actually practice this. They practice playing with 13. That's just whoa. Yeah, I can fully understand practicing playing with 14 because it's pretty common, but 13, Jesus Christ. Anyway, so that was half time, and after that incredibly dismal start, we end the half 7-all.
Yeah, I mean, first I forgot to say in my lead-in that the Leinster players on the night were wearing black armbands in memory of Dave Fagan, who sadly passed away. There, he was a strength and conditioning coach for Leinster over the years, and he also worked a lot with our academy. And that sadly happened in the last week. That's why they were wearing the armbands. Yeah. But the first half wasn't much of a tribute, unfortunately. As you said, you did a great job describing what was there. I mean, Bristol's plan, and Pat Lam knows how to beat Leinster. He's done it before, and I mean, the plan would have been to disrupt and to make it awkward for us to score first. And they were doing a really good job of that. I mean, we've talked about Premiership defenses may not have been the best, but the 15 they started with definitely did a really good job getting us in the right areas. But it was a half of, I mean, even before the scrums, it was a half of nobody was capitalizing on any advantage. I mean, Bristol would have the ball, they'd do a knock on to be a scrum, but then the penalty would go the other way. But it's a touch. We might lose the line out then, and then they'd get an advantage, and then they'd lose it. It was back and forth for the whole half. And on the scrums, like you say, the ref didn't seem like we don't like talking about refs, but I don't think he could handle it all. You've got Genge against Slimani, two wily props going at it, and they're doing all sorts. They're going through the whole list of whatever they get up to in there. It was all being done, and who was winning. And you often see French referees, once they've picked a side, they just give them the penalties all the time. That wasn't really happening here. He was trying to even it out, I think, and it just got to a stage where he wasn't sure what he was going to do on each on each scrum. So and like you say, it went into the second half. But the thing about Leinster, we've noticed a shift in Leinster's play over the past few seasons when it goes from the URC into Europe. It seems like there's a Euro mode that Leinster go into. Unfortunately, it took us to go down to 13 men until we seem to find it. It's like a switch we can flick on. So in a way, I suppose it's good that we can do that. But like you say, it's kind of better to do it earlier if possible. But there was a nice kick over the top from Sam. Larmer chased it, and it fell. Their fullback had to slide to get it, and it just got away from him. And Larmer was in the right place, and took it the rest of the way. And then all of a sudden, boom! It's 7-7. Now, if you told Bristol before the first half kicked off that it was going to be 7-7 half time, they probably would have thought that was a decent outcome. But the way it turned out, they left at least one try behind. When they had two extra men going into the break, and it just it wasn't. We were in a good position for us, all things considered.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't see the ball.
Yeah.
After they scored that try, we didn't let them see the ball. Basically, that's what happened then.
Yeah, absolutely. What did you make of the first half, Kieran?
You'd like to talk about the game and not the referee, but it was kind of just random penalty generator kind of stuff. He didn't seem to know what he was giving the penalties for, and we'll see that early in the second half. But in fairness, Larmer's try, look, he chased the ball, he had to be there. It was a bit of luck, but the ball bounced right for him. Bristol, I thought, first half an hour, they were probably the better team for the majority of the first half, but then you have to do something when you're on top, and we've seen that Leinster have been guilty of it too, particularly in finals of late, being in the ascendancy and not doing enough when on top. And in fairness, I think it shouldn't have taken 2 yellow cards to go down to if we play like that against a better team with more European pedigree. And I think that's part of the issue for Bristol. They just didn't have that European know-how. If we play like that against Toulouse, the game would have been over at halftime. We would have been well out of it. If we played like that against any kind of team that has better European know-how, then you wouldn't want to see this kind of performance in March or April. It's grand now in November, and we got away with it. And 7-7. That was actually a good score for us in the end. And I think not conceding another try since going down to 13, that was almost as good as scoring one. So it was being 7-7 when we were down to 13 for 10, 11 minutes. That was kind of as good as being ahead. Get into the locker room. Whatever they said at halftime obviously worked. But I agree that Leinster seem to have this mode they can switch on, but you can't wait until the other team's doing better for 30 minutes to switch on, because better teams will punish you. As for Max Deegan's yellow card, I mean, it was I thought when it happened in real time, I thought he just fell into him in the tackle, but it was a bit of a stupid move. I mean, you could see he was looking. You could see where you saw his head turn towards the player, and if that happens in a bigger game, it could be more costly. Right not to be any more than the yellow because there was cover, but that bit of discipline. Look, it happens in the modern game. Teams get yellow cards, but that bit of discipline is really important.
Yeah, I mean, it's just on those yellow cards, I mean, you can't really have too many complaints, and I think Rich was right as well. Sam was lucky himself. He actually tried to pull out of his tackle, possibly fearing what had happened the week before, and but he ended up making it almost worse because he ended up just sliding right into him. And as for Max, he grabbed the first fella, and he got the offload away. And he saw the second one went to get away, and I think it was just an instinct. So I've got to stop him too, but I'm already holding this guy, so the leg shot out before he even had a chance. It's just an instinct. But listen, we did well to come back into it, especially with two men down, and we were certainly the happier of the two sides at halftime. When, like you say, the score was Bristol Bears 7, Leinster 7. But before we return to the pod, first a little reminder of all the different places you'll find us in the Ruggersphere. For our latest bonus chat for our YouTube channel, we had a quick look at the Champions Cup as a tournament and whether or not it holds the same prestige as it once did. And to get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the different social media platforms, you can bookmark us at Linktree/Harpin On Rugby. We do most of our social media on Blue Sky this weather, so do follow us there if you can. And please be sure to like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so after a new star signing for the Bristol women's side, Alona Maher was signing autographs throughout the halftime break, Leinster had a star signing of their own on the pitch as Sam Prendergast got things back underway, Kieran.
Yeah, I was glad to see a couple of subs early in the first half. So Frawley went off, who I actually thought was unlucky to go off because he was playing out of position as a fullback. And look, we've talked about, I think every week on Harpin On Rugby, there's talk about Leinster's 10s and Ireland's 10s at this stage. One thing I would say is I think Frawley deserves a chance. Starting at 10, that's not a slide on Sam Prendergast. I just, like, he has all the potential in the world, but unfortunately, potential's only really great when it's time to pay off that potential. And in fairness, he's probably not at the level yet of winning us a game on his own, whereas Frawley probably has more of that level. So I think he was unlucky to come off there. And not that Sam necessarily should have come off, but I'd love to see Frawley get a run at 10, but he made way for Jordy Barrett. And then there were a couple of other subs early enough in the half, and I was glad to see that because, to be honest, I feel like this season it hasn't been, it hasn't been great at times. There's been flashes of good stuff. I think maybe Snyman aside, there hasn't been too many very consistent performers. So I think, sometimes you need that to light a fire under players. And I think one thing about Leo Cullen, he's clearly great at getting on well with players, but sometimes you need to be a manager as well, and sometimes you need to be a bit not mean or nasty. It doesn't have to be personal. It's just a case of, look, that wasn't good enough, so you're not playing next week, or look, that wasn't good enough, so this player's coming on. Jameson Gibson Park, he had a better second half, but you could argue aside from the first game against Edinburgh, he hasn't really done it properly this season. And to be honest, I think that can be said for a lot of players. And I think I'd like to see, we always talk about how big the Leinster squad is. I'd like to see, if Cormac Foley had been on the bench, I think there would have been calls for him maybe coming on. Unfortunately, I don't think Luke McGrath really offers the same kind of threat as either of those players, so there wasn't really that problem. But you can't have any players being certain of their position. So I was glad to see a couple of early subs. First kind of big instance was there was more just scrum. There's a penalty to someone. We don't know who the penalty's for or what it's for. And eventually the ref gives a card to props on both sides, the players on both sides of scrum. It just seemed to be him acknowledging he didn't particularly know what was going on. I think it's a real issue in, like, we don't particularly want to go back and revisit last year's European Cup final, but Matthew Carley, and I will say that the refereeing wasn't the losing of the game for Leinster or the winning for Toulouse, but Matthew Carley wasn't a good enough ref to be reffing that game. So it is kind of an issue, I think, in rugby, just there are refs that aren't really at that level, and we don't want to be complaining about refs. It's not an easy job, but this was a bit of a fiasco, and we'll see that towards the end of the game as well. But eventually, Leinster, we talked about European mode. There was kind of a 12-minute spell here between the 50th minute to the 65th minute, 15-minute spell, I suppose, where Leinster just clicked, and it was like classic Leinster in the pool stage of Europe, putting up a big score. So it's another scrum, and this one stays up. Everything's steady, everything's good. Gibson Park plays out to Jordy Barrett. finally at Harpin On Rugby, we have a Geordie to be proud of. Forget Kristen Ross. We have a Geordie we can really heap praise on. Um, but Barrett, he just does this great delayed pass. He draws in two defenders, and that opens up the gap for Sam Prendergast, who in fairness spots the gap. And as I said, I don't necessarily think Prendergast should have came off for anything he did. For anything he did in the first half. I just aside from that dodgy tackle, but I just think Frawley would have been worthy of time at 10 as well. But Barrett draws in the defence really well, plays Prendergast through the gap, and he gets in there easy enough. Conversion right over the posts, and suddenly Leinster are 14-7 up without having played particularly well. And from here, it's just kind of blood in the water, and Leinster go on and get the bonus point. So the third try is by Jordy Barrett. This time he sets up his own try, kind of with a really good pass to Jordan Larmour, who I thought had a good game actually. I think he's quietly becoming a very important player for Leinster again. And James Lowe, probably one of those players who hasn't been as good recently as we know he can be. And again, those are very high standards. But Jordan Larmour, he's really stepped up. So good run by Gibson Park, who did have a better second half than first half. And again, Barrett finds the ball. He just slices through the defence from close range. There's a ruck. And he just slices through. He throws kind of a dummy pass and just, everyone thought he was going one way, he was going the other. Slices through the defence, touches down. He makes it look so easy, and then that's what great players do. They make the difficult things they're doing look very easy, and they do the simple things very well. And just 2 minutes later, then this is an excellent try. This is a proper kind of European rugby highlight reel try. So it's a line out thrown by Kelleher, won by Conan. Doris plays out to Barrett. The commentator was commenting on all the orange boots in the Leinster team, and there were a fair few. He plays out to Ringrose on the wing. And in fairness, I will say I think Ringrose playing on the wing. He it's not his preferred position, but it shows what kind of a team player he is. He doesn't mind stepping in somewhere else when he's needed. So there's goes through a couple of hands, and then the ball comes to Snyman. And as we've seen in the first kind of couple of months of the season, that RG fella's a bit good, and he absolutely barges through a gap. No one can stop him. It must be a terrifying sight to see someone the size of RG Snyman running towards you, but he made it all look very easy again, striding towards the line, drew in another couple of players, last minute pass to Prendergast, who has a very easy run in to touchdown. And in fairness to Prendergast, he spots those runs, he sees what's going on around him. So, for a young player, he does have good vision. So from there, it's that's the fourth try, that's the bonus point, and it's all looking a bit bleak for Bristol. They just don't seem to have any answers. And again, it's probably that bit of European know-how. They don't have that kind of pedigree. From there, Leinster are making a sub. Then a couple of minutes later, bringing on Ross Byrne. While that sub's being made, I don't even think Byrne was on the pitch when Leinster take a line out and Van der Fleer just barges over. He gets the ball down. The ref strangely says it's no try and goes to the TMO and says his decision is no try. Is it a try, yes or no? We see for the replays though it is grounded. So again, not great reffing. I like if he couldn't see the grounding, he probably should have said he probably should have just asked was the ball ground instead of going with no try, because then that's I guess it's a loaded comment, I suppose, and it's telling the TMO to nearly confirm the decision. But from there, the game's pretty much over. Bristol do get one back, and Ferris, I think Bristol are the kind of team, if you keep their squad together a couple of seasons' time, they'll be a more dangerous side in Europe. But again, this is just a tough lesson for them. But here it was Gabby Imitoy, who looks like a very dangerous sniper kind of winger. He starts on one wing, and then on the other way. Then he turns up on the other wing to collect Marmion's kick through, and not a whole lot you can do when someone that fast is running past you. So gets that one down easy enough. Not converted. So that's a big try for Bristol in terms of it's probably something's going to come down to point difference at some point in the ranking from 1 to 16. and in the rankings from 1 to 6 in each pool. So you know, I think it was a credit to them that they went for that, but that's going to be a big try. The fact that Bath have to come to Leinster, and it's probably you'd expect Leinster to put a big score up in that game, being so good at home. So it's probably it might work out well in the end in terms of points difference for Bristol. Then the end of the game is just a disaster, really. There's just I don't even really know if there's any rugby in particular played. So we had about a 5 minute spell where the ref standing over a scrum, counting players, trying to figure out how many people should be in the scrum. And in the end, we go for non-contested scrums. I'm not too sure what was happening here, and I don't think the ref was either.
That
Eventually,
delay, I counted, that delay took 4 minutes
yeah, it was a
to
long
sort
one.
out.
It
It
was
was
yeah,
ridiculous.
it was it was it was. I think it was actually longer than the previous two tries took the score.
Mm.
But basically, from there, Leinster actually do get the ball down again over the try line, and this is an odd one because it was Leinster have a try. Basically, it's a ruck. The ball's out. Doris reaches over, picks it up, touches down. So you're thinking, right, that's a try. The ball's out, but you go back. The ref had said for Doris to leave. The ball was out, but the ref had said for Doris to leave it. The ref had told Bristol, no, he can't touch it. So obviously, from Bristol's point of view, they were thinking, well, he can't touch it. So in fairness, it was a bit of a mess from of a refereeing call because again, the call should have been used, and if the call had been correct, Bristol would have got rid of it. So probably the right decision to not award the try because it was ref's fault, I guess. But just a bit of a disaster one. I hope this ref doesn't ref a big game later in the tournament because he needs to go do a bit of studying somewhere. Eventually, then Bristol have the kick from their own line from their 22, and it bounces in play and then goes out. So to my mind, that means the game should have been over. I mean, I think I don't know if I'm getting this wrong, but it didn't go straight out. It bounced and then went out. So should that not have been the full time clock as in red? But we have the line out. The commentary seemed to agree that that should have been game over. I'll have to read up on that one. But in play, I'm sure the commentary didn't seem sure either. I don't think it's something that comes up very often. But um, from there, it's kind of just a bit of, the game was as sad as the weather at that stage, and eventually Bristol tried to again kick the touch, and it just goes out in the full behind the try line, and it was a messy ending. And to be honest, there was 12 minutes of championship rugby from Leinster, but aside from that, it was probably a game to forget. I think a lot of people were expecting a very good game between these two sides. Weather probably didn't help the ref. Again, you don't like blaming refs for rugby. But look, it was probably a learning curve for Bristol. Job done for Leinster. But yeah, at the end of the game, you nearly, out of a morbid curiosity, you'd nearly have to go watch it back again. Those last kind of 5 minutes after the Imatoy try, just to see what exactly happened because it was a bit of a disaster. But yeah, 4 tries for Leinster in that second half and one for Bristol.
Yeah, I mean, the second half didn't really start that great for us. I mean, we got lucky a couple of times. We had another trip from Joe McCarthy this time that I thought he was lucky. Not, I mean, it didn't seem too different to the other one. And the first one was a yellow card. I don't know why this one wasn't, but he got away with just a penalty there. And then you had Ronan Kelleher. Now I know the scrums were frustrating, but he got a bit of back chat to the referee after one of them. He just said, "That's wrong. That's wrong." Right into his face after a scrum penalty, and you just can't be doing that. And the ref penalized us 10 meters, but luckily nothing came out of that. But what we finally did with those scrums was we just went channel one. And when we got that score, we put it into the scrum and just straight out instead of messing around trying to get some traction on a shove and see could we win a penalty. It was a lottery at that stage. So if you've any way of if you've any kind of set play, set move between your scrum half, your hooker, and your number 8, straight in, straight out, and just get the play going as quickly as you can. And that's where the first try came from.
So just to say that's actually something I think is a real positive from this game. That one complaint we had of Leinster in the European Cup final was they weren't playing to the ref. They weren't. They were they were kind of trying to be too fancy, too nice about things. If the ref doesn't know what he's doing, then you just have to play the game the ref's reffing sometimes. And yeah, rather than trying to eke out penalties, look, we have a direct look, just go direct. So I think that's a good point to bring up. But yeah, there was. You need to have that bit of savviness and think that, look, the ref doesn't know what he's calling. It's a scrum. We could lose the ball again here, just in and out. Just like that was something we didn't do in the final of the European Cup, when it was kind of like, again, the referee didn't particularly know what he was doing at the breakdown, but we weren't playing to that fact. So yeah, I think that's a good point. But
yeah, and of course you had that class perfect timing from Jody Barrett. It's pass out the back door to Sam, and a nice finish. And then like you say, there was like 3 tries in 7 minutes before, and some more, Jordy himself going over, and then you've got Snyman, the side of Snyman breaking out of the 22, and Sam in support with the fend at the end, a strong finish. I thought he couldn't run and carry with the ball. I thought that was a problem with Sam's game that everyone's analyzing, even though he's been playing top level rugby for like 5 minutes. But no, listen, we kind of had the game wrapped up then. Bristol did, to their credit, Bristol did try to come back, but this is where our defense took over as well. I think, like I said, Bristol had a good defense from the start, but I think they had a plan with the 15 starters. But once they went into their bench, their defense started to creak. There started to be gaps, started to show. But for us, we had kind of had a 23-man effort. It took them, we were under the cosh, but it was 7 minutes of play before they actually got that try. If you just look at the highlights, you see Marmion kick it through, and the winger collects it. It's a good finish, but it was 7 minutes of creating that situation. Our defense just wasn't letting them through up to then. And if you're already got the bonus point in the bag and you're well up, if you can hold out the other team for 7 minutes, you'll win more than you lose. Another aspect of that second half was the whole game was Josh Van der Fleer. He's in the form of his life at the moment, and this is someone who's already won World Player of the Year. But he got the player of the Autumn Nation Series just announced on Monday, and he's definitely the leading light for both Leinster and Ireland at the moment. He's just getting involved everywhere, in both with and without the ball, and scoring tries as well, into the bargain. But listen, we had the gear to go up to. We finally found it, and once we did, we were able to put Bristol away. Hopefully, we will need to start sooner, going into more deeper into this competition. But I suppose you can't really complain. What did you think, Rich?
Yeah, second half was a great improvement. Obviously, the tactical switch of having a playmaker alongside Sam clearly worked. Good as Robbie is, he's not a playmaker in the same mold as in the same mold as Geordie Barrett, certainly, or even Kieran Frawley. You could have. I see why they did that. I see the tactical switch and how they had to rejig it in order to enable that. Listen, if you've got a Geordie Barrett in your side, you're playing. There is absolutely, why else have that kind of weapon there and not use it and use it as often as you possibly can. So I think that's what changed everything. It allowed, it gave Sam greater freedom, which is why he was able to express himself. I also take the point of all this rubbish that keep hearing about Sam not being a running threat and all this nonsense. It's there, patently obvious that he can do it. It just needs to be facilitated. And the fact of the matter is that when you're playing test match rugby, and this is the closest from at a club level that you can get to that, the defenses aren't very merciful or accommodating to allow you to get through. The whole point of the exercise is to stop the opposition scoring. So I think that's what Geordie gave us yesterday in that second half. The guy's a class act. The bench as a whole, when they come on, had an enormous impact in that second half. And that is a damn fine thing to see, because not always, some of them may not, but collectively the bench as it was that came on, they all added positivity, they all added oomph. I'm a bit annoyed at that Erkes Neyman with that assist to Sam. He used both hands. I mean, what the fuck? He only ever uses one hand. I mean, that's outrageous behavior. But like Kieran's just said, I mean, can you imagine having to face that thing running at you? No. But yeah, what a brilliant player he is. I'm certainly not going to get tired of saying that. We've already mentioned Kieran's also had mentioned it about it being harsh and Frawley again. I really do hope that we manage our tens properly, and within which I most definitely include him. I'd love to see him getting the starting berth next week, but I don't think that's going to happen. Sadly, from his perspective, because he is a huge talent. And sadly, we have a history of not treating some players well, and they walk. There's one called Tyke Byrne, was one of them. Joey Carberry, for other reasons, left as well. I mean, he was a burgeoning talent at the time. It didn't subsequently didn't come to fruition, but at the time he was. And if we keep buggering this kid up for much longer, he's going to have to walk. And that would be a very sad day for Leinster, because I really think he's a damn fine player. He could have done any of the things that Sam did yesterday easily. He's done it on numerous occasions, despite the fact that he's not being played at 10. He could have slotted in at 12. He could have slotted in at 10 yesterday to accommodate Geordie Barrett. It didn't happen, but anyway, these are the guys that take those decisions. I don't. So yeah, all in all, that much improved second half, not without its problems, but at least the work-ons and the switching on, as you say, needs to happen earlier, and not wait till we're down to 13 before we do that.
Absolutely. And as we say, the final score at the end was Bristol 12, Leinster 35. Elsewhere in the rugby world, there were mixed fortunes for the other provinces. First, Munster took advantage of two Stade Francais red cards to earn a bonus point victory at home, while the Ulstermen fell to a heavy defeat away to champions Toulouse. In the Challenge Cup, Connacht got off to their own maximum point start at home to Zebra. Back in Leinster's Champions Cup pool, our old friends La Rochelle fell short of a bonus point win away to Bath, while our next opposition, Clermont, put 4 converted tries on Benetton with no reply, putting them top of Pool 2 ahead of their visit to the Aviva Stadium. There were also Irish teams in action at the Cape Town Sevens, and I'm afraid both genders were able to improve on their poor showings in Dubai the week before. The women at least got off to a bright start, defeating Spain before 3 successive losses left them in 8th place, while on the men's side, injury left us with the bare bones of a squad, as Harry McNulty had to come out of retirement to tog out, and even then, we were going into matches with just 8 fit players, meaning 4 defeats in a row left us with the dreaded wooden spoon. The circuit now moves on to Perth at the end of January, and Ireland need to improve if they're to get a top 8 finish to avoid the lottery of the relegation playoffs. Now, going back to our feature match from Saturday, afterwards, Geordie Barrett told Premier Sports this about his debut, quote, "I've only been here about 10 days, but Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose have been awesome, making my job a lot easier," end quote. And from the fans' point of view, at the full-time whistle, Angus O'Brien said this on our Facebook page, quote, "First half was poor, but the second half was loads of fun. I especially enjoyed the 2 tries from Sam, not a running threat, Prendergast." Do you disagree, or would you have said the same thing a different way? Well, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after Leinster and Ireland matches. Why don't you join in the conversation next time? And so now this brings us to our final thoughts, starting with Rich.
Yeah, mixed bag of a game, as we've said. Lots to improve upon, lots to be hopeful about, because we clearly can turn it on. It's just a question of turning it on for longer periods in a match. Pinching oneself at seeing kids like Sam playing European rugby, Gus playing European rugby, having people like Erkes Neyman coming off the bench, Geordie Barrett there as well. Like I say, yes, lots to work upon, lots to improve from that match. It wasn't our best, but we still ended up going and tonking them. If anybody really needs to feel downtrodden, it should be Bristol, who, despite everything, every advantage that they had, being at home and the 2-man advantage, etc., just couldn't break the defence down. So yeah, looking forward to the remainder of the competition. Let's see where it leads us this year.
Yeah, and then we talk about the bench, but there's also the players that weren't there. I mean, Hugo Keenan, Jamie Osborne, James Lowe. I mean,
Yeah.
exactly. So there would have been even more selection headaches. What
Yeah.
did you think, Kieran?
You know, if we'd been offered bonus point win away from home against a potential banana skin side, a sticky opposition, I think you'll take that to start a European campaign. Again, we've often talked about how, you know, Leinster are great at this time of year, great in the pool stage of the European Cup, great in the kind of um in the kind of early stage of the league, but then the last couple of seasons it just hasn't happened towards April, May, June. So yeah, I think look, you take the results. You don't have to be world beaters at this stage of the season. You just have to keep getting the bonus point wins. I think it was really important. We got the bonus point um, at 7-all. I would have the way it was going in the first half. I think you would have just taken a win at all, but to get the bonus point was really good. Yeah, look, we have a great squad, and it needs to be managed well. I agree with what Rich said. I think Kieran Frawley should start at 10 more often. Really, I think. In fact, I think, you know, as it's as much about managing Sam as it is Kieran Frawley, and you don't need to give. You know, like I've said it before, and it might be a bit controversial. I think Prendergast would, and it's with the Leinster hat on, not the Ireland hat on. I think you'd benefit more from playing the 3 or 4 games for Leinster during the Six Nations window than being in the Ireland camp and not featuring for Ireland. Because realistically, I think Jack Crowley starts at 10, Kieran Frawley's on the bench. So, you know, maybe Prendergast benefits more from having that game time. And from a Leinster point of view, he would be my preferred choice in that time with Frawley away. But I'd rather see Frawley start at 10 next week. I think he deserves to have a run of games. I'd like to see him have this season as our main 10, and that's not a slide on Prendergast, who look, hopefully he'll get a few more demographics to become a running threat. But it's not a slide on him. It's just a case of he just, you know, he's still so young, he's still so inexperienced. You don't know how your career is going to go. You don't need to put all your eggs in a very young player basket when you have another player who's still young himself, but he's more developed and he's probably just ahead of Sam. And I agree with Rich. He probably can do everything Sam Prendergast can. So, you know, I think we have a great squad. I'd like to see Jordy Barrett start next week just to give him, you know, a big debut in the Aviva. But at the same time, he's only been with the squad a couple of days, so you wouldn't begrudge him just getting a spot off the bench. I you know, I think we need to start a lot quicker and be a lot more efficient in the first half, and no more stupid yellow cards because Claremont, you know, it's not a final, so Claremont are very dangerous in Europe, and then they'll know how to punish us. They'll know how to take advantage of chances, and you know, it's really important we get the bonus point wins at home as well. So 4 points mightn't be enough. But before you get the bonus point, you have to win the game, and that's not going to be easy next week. So, you know, I think, yeah, look, I think we need to be an awful lot better next week. But look, bonus point win away from home in difficult weather against decent opposition, you know, you'll take that in fairness.
Okay, well, that's brilliant, lads. Many thanks to Rich and Kieran for joining us. That was a great chat, and I hope to have you both on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jeff. Nice to see you, Kieran.
Bye, Rich.
As for our next batch of Harpin, keep an eye out for our 80 plus column, which will post on Wednesday. Then our attention turns to the visit of Claremont to the Aviva Stadium. Be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.